three key things. This blankets anything ISO. So we could throw in Hedera in the mix. We could throw in XRP. So with that said, smash that like if you haven't done so already. Hear me out on this. I will use Jasmy as a reference before we get to it. Why am I doing that? Because I wanted to point out some key things. So I don't even have to pull up the chart in regards to this. If you don't hold Jasmy, it's okay, but it's just a reference. It's an example. I want you to think about this. So over at Will Fix's house, we did that little collaboration. I said that on December 2nd, this was on the 30th of November, I said on December 2nd, we should see some price action, significant price action in regards to Jasmy. We saw that. What was significant? It was the mandate, basically, of my number with medical data for Japan. Now, say what you want. Don't dismiss that. Because that was the first taste of a utility mandate, if you will. But in this case, it was Jasmy. Well, Jasmy is not ISO 222, but it is an ISO standard in itself. Here's the key aha moment. Significance of mandates. Check this out. What about the other ISO coins? All right? Your X's, your Quants, Hedera, some of the other ones, maybe Casper. I don't know. I got to do a video about Casper. But look at this. I have shared this on Citation from Swift.com, not Swift blockchain, but the significance of the mandate. Just in case you're new to this, well, it's ISO 222 mandate. The ISO 222 mandate is being adopted by financial institutions around the world, including, of course, the United States. Federal Reserve is scheduled to migrate to ISO 222 by March 10th of 2025. All right, that's migration. That's not the full mandate. And what do you see? CHIPS, clearinghouse, interbank payment systems. Some of you guys feel as though that this is the next big leg up going into 2025 will be March. I would agree with you. There should be price action, but I'm not selling the farm when it comes to that yet. You know what I mean? Unless it's like, 10,000 overnight or something crazy, right? Like, I get that too. But look what it says. Swift Network. Swift Network has mandated ISO 222 adoption by 2025 for all cross-border payments. Not just some, but all. I did cite that a while back. And this payment market infrastructures, PMIs, all major currencies are either live or in the process of adopting ISO 222 by November 2025 for cross-border payments. Yeah. All right. Well, it's that transition. Look at this one. Beyond the transition, maximizing the value of ISO 222. So how would we maximize it? Well, I already did the outline about orchestration of harnessing some of these things, especially with TC307, Quant Networks, Overledger. But guess what? I took the liberty to get into the weeds about this. 2 months ago, did you see this on X? Some guys shared it. But a lot of people didn't. It's ISO 222 and your payments modernization journey. There was a meeting about the standard. And again, just back last September of this year, compliance exercise. Did they do trials? Of course they did. Is it an opportunity for banks and corporates to benefit from a structured and enriched data to drive operational efficiencies and improve customer experiences? Yeah, of course it is. But listen to this, because when we get into it, there's a key area. It talks about Fedwire in regards to ISO. Are all the banks in the same bucket? What are the banks talking about? Contingency options, and this last part, the communication plan. Think about communication plan. Through the what? The ISO messages. I mean, it's not Greek anymore. So I will play this. I want you guys to hear this. And then the next part I'm going to get into was this. And it's about the Sibos meeting, which was literally the end of October 2024. Again, about the mandate. So this is somewhat new for some of you guys. So I want you to hear me out, because the key thing is, if Jasmy was that taste of what mandates can do, could you imagine? Can you imagine? I'll come out of the frame for a second. Like, I had this conversation with Will, briefly also with Michael Cornwell. I'm going to call it right now. I honestly think I will be a millionaire. Maybe some of you guys feel this way too. This time next year. Before I used to think maybe 2026, maybe 2030, and all that. But yeah, again, I'm not going to share my whole portfolio with you guys. I don't really do that. Little tiny things, I don't mind. But um, I like to hear your thoughts. Where are you? Did you accumulate enough? Do you feel as though that there's still a few to accumulate? For me, the answer is yes. Yeah, we're paying a little bit more for it, but that mandate for ISO 222, that has got to be the biggest giant enchilada of them all. It absolutely has to be. All right, let's get into this, and then we'll wrap this up here in a bit. This is from PwC US. Yes, US.
Hello, everyone. This is Tanvi Patel. I'm a principal within the firm. I focus mainly on payment transformation, and I'm here today with Gabriela Almeida.
Hi, Tanvi. It's great to be here with you. As you mentioned, I'm a director in our payments practice. Work a lot with you.
Awesome. So we are here today to talk to you all about payment modernization. Now, in general, payment modernization in my head is three-legged stool. You have the financial institutions that are in this whole journey of digitizing payments, creating customer experience, trying to ensure that they're giving this seamless omni-channel experience, right? Then we are seeing a massive eruption within the tech providers where more and more fintechs are coming up, trying to make sure that the banks can leverage the fintech relationship to kind of do speed to market. Plus, we are seeing the big techs also kind of modernizing, leveraging all the emerging technologies, trying to kind of get to their banking clients out there. The third-legged stool, in my opinion, is the market infrastructures. We have so many market infrastructures out here, and we're seeing them modernizing and taking initiatives within today's market, right? So now you're having three parties trying to modernize and create this ecosystem within the US. Whenever that does, right, it's scary to when you're enhancing a platform after 20 plus years, right? So resiliency has been a big topic of conversation. Are you making sure everything is resilient? Are you allowed? Banks are mainly thinking about, am I ready to commit to my payment commitments to my end users? So I know you've been having a lot of conversations with clients about what's the contingency? Am I ready for this? Like, what am I going to do if I don't meet certain of these market timelines? So can you share with us what's the conversation you're having with the clients?
Yeah, to your point, one of the biggest conversations these days is around ISO 20022, specifically for Fedwire. Now, we know SWIFT has been around for several years now in the coexistence period, and then CHIPS went live in April with ISO. And so one of the biggest topics is kind of, as we approach the 2025 deadline for Fedwire ISO, how are banks doing progressing against their timeline, as well as what are the contingency plan options that they are exploring so that they are ready for the deadline if their kind of current plan gets delayed or is not met.
So as you're having conversations, right, do you see the conversation being consistent, like all financial institutions in the same bucket or range of getting ready for this ISO timeline?
Yeah, I mean, I think not necessarily. I think everyone's in a different kind of bucket, and it depends on the bank and kind of where they are in the journey. I think overall, we're seeing a lot of the global banks are in a bit, I would say, ahead of the game. A lot of that is because they do have global business. A lot of Europe is already on ISO. They've kind of been through that, as well as just have the resources in place kind of initially to pre-plan years ago, I would say. Mm-hmm. But now I would say the rest of the banks in the US especially are kind of at different points. I would say most of them are at the testing phase, doing end-to-end testing, getting ready for DIT2 testing. I would say kind of need to be at that point, as well as a lot of banks are now exploring contingency options because this is kind of the first time we've done something of this scale in the US. It's making sure you have kind of all your ducks in a row to make sure you are ready for the March deadline.
Okay. I think because it's such a key change in the US, especially kind of changing I know ISO is all about payment data. You're changing from a legacy format to this thing, but it's not just a data exercise, right? So what are banks having conversations? What are the contingencies that they're talking about, in your opinion, the top two that you've heard from the clients that we talk to all the time? Like, what are the options that they're looking at?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, a lot of banks are thinking about an ISO translator, and that translation layer can take various different forms depending on where you put that translation layer in your systems. But a lot of it is around translating that incoming data that is in ISO format to be able to be digested by your legacy systems, and then being able to translate it out in ISO format. There are some benefits that you can kind of keep your current infrastructure, at least as a short-term solution, and just add that translation layer. But there are a lot of considerations you need to think about. It's a short-term solution. You need to make sure data isn't getting unnecessarily truncated. You need to make sure you have data storage, as well as you tend to also be relying on a third-party vendor. So making sure you have that planning in place and have that solution in place, as well as tested. And then I would say the other big contingency plan we've seen is around Fedline Advantage. Now, this is a very manual process. You need to have a connection to Fedline Advantage already in place or be able to put it in place, which takes some time. You need to also be able to test that. That needs to be in ISO format, even using Fedline Advantage. And then the manual piece, I think, is the biggest consideration around there. Depending on what your volume is in Fedline, it is a very manual process. So you probably need additional resources to process that, that volume, at least in the short term. And then again, that would be a short-term solution. So it's really, these are really truly contingency options, but I would say those are the two we're seeing most discussion about.
It's interesting because as you think about contingency, right, there's of course a mandate that everyone needs to do their BCB, disaster recovery, right? So contingency is always being discussed, but this contingency is slightly different. The two options you provided do have cons associated with it, right? Especially Fedline Advantage. It's been there, you annually tested, but it's so manual that do you see an option like thinking about taking that large volume of a Fedwire, which at any institution is pretty high, most of them is pretty high, putting that manually through that terminal, it's an option. Is it a viable option? Maybe for a day, but not beyond that. So any other contingency that you've heard institutions thinking about in lieu of like, you know, all banks like to do plan A, B, C, and Z. So have you heard anything other than the two that you've spoken about?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some banks kind of explore correspondent banking. Again, not maybe the best option. Again, these are all contingency, but we also have seen banks taking the opportunity to take a true look at their wire volume and see if they can reroute it through other payment rails. Again, there needs to be analysis done. It's not like you can just decide you're going to reroute your volume through like RTP or FedNow as an example. There are considerations with that. As an example, if you want to take this opportunity to make a more strategic decision of rerouting some payments through instant payments, you need to make sure first and foremost you have send and receive capabilities for FedNow and RTP, and then you also need to look at the volume of payments as well as the transaction value of those payments to see if it makes sense to go through a different payment rail and you're following the relevant regulations as well.
And I think that would come also with, right, like all of a sudden, if you take your wire volume and send it through ACH, even through same day ACH, it's the communication with your end user, right? Till today, yes, in future, I think we all hope that our consumer and commercial clients would only tell their banking institution that I want to send X amount to X by today or by this day, and it sends out. Today, we are not there yet. So you do need to have that whole communication plan with your end user if I'm rerouting the wire payment through ACH, right? I think it's very interesting because every time you touch payment, the whole concept of banks trying to make sure that in today's fraud environment, as fraud's also spiking up, how do you make sure you transition this or kind of still adhere to your payment commitment, if you say so, but in a secure and a trusted way? Because at the end of the day, your trust is what you're going to rely on from a payment perspective, right? This is very interesting. But again, as an industry, ISO is not new to us, right? As you said before, CHIPS has gone through, we all have lessons learned to go through that. But again, it's a good exercise for the SWIFT coming in because the coexistence period ends in November of next year. Okay. Do you want to give final remarks or to our audience out here who want to kind of work in the journey, are trying to help their financial institutions on what are the key things to keep in mind as this date is approaching?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it might sound simple, but Planning's key, making sure you have all the right stakeholders at the table. This is truly a transformational journey. It isn't just a data translation or data format change. And so you want to make sure you are planning, you have the right governance in place, then you also have the right focus and resources on this as we approach that deadline to not only meet the deadline, but also make sure you're going to take advantage of all the benefits afterwards, because this is really about enriching the data and getting true benefits out of it, not just about kind of meeting the deadline. So don't lose sight of that as well.
Okay, thank you. This was very informative, right? I think if you're helping your clients, if you are in that journey, please talk. There are a lot of industry forums. You can come talk to us. Happy to have conversations, because this is going to truly transform our payment ecosystem.
Again, bringing that to you. Now, check this out. Shout out to our brother Smoke on X, one of the best researchers out there, right? A lot of you guys follow Smoke. Why point this out? So in that interview, you heard these two ladies mention Fedline, all right? This is going to age well because Smoke brings the alpha here. So what do we have? We have this posting from, of course, Smoke. This is from, April 19th, but man, oh man. You know how this lady, or both ladies, were talking about some of this? So, clear breakdown to exactly how FedNow connects to the Interledger protocol in XRP. FedNow to, of course, Fedline, remember they mentioned that, equals TCP IP-based network messaging system for 10,000 banks. People underestimate the potential of Ripple XRP, not realizing that, when we talk about these partnerships or, all these banks and so on, like, they definitely stand out. So 10,000 banks. Interledger and XRP front runners to beat TCP IP equivalent in fintech plus ILP presentation on TCP IP. And check this out for just a brief moment. I'm going to put this up on the other screen. What do you see? Well, you see here, like it says, if I'm sending you money to you, that money is deposited to your account from mine and it's instantly available. The opposite is also true. If you charge someone for a service, that money is instantly debited from their account. But FedNow will run on the Fedline, an IP-based network and messaging system that currently provides payment and information services to more than 10,000 financial organizations. My goodness. My goodness. All right. What else? Well, jumping back to here a little bit more. Look what it says here on this illustration. What do we have? The following network access is required for Fedline Advantage subscribers. Remember those examples we gave earlier in the outline if you're around? It's understanding the whole thing of subscription models and also the whole thing of an internet protocol, because it's what's utilized. And look at this. The Federal Reserve banks cannot provide any setup or configuration assistance to troubleshoot network access issues when using non-Federal Reserve Bank designated or provided equipment. This includes firewall and router configuration problems. All right. What else? Brings us to this next screenshot. This is important. It says here that, I'll blow it up on the other screen. We currently have a multitude of digital assets. Well, think about which ones those would be. We now all use one network protocol, TCP/IP. Only one is required, and it applies, of course, to digital assets. Interledger and XRP, if you're wondering, are at the front runners to be that TCP/IP equivalent in the world of fintech. Front runners? I mean, come on, guys. You love seeing the terminology, especially if you're like me and you hold Ripple XRP in a good amount. At this point, in no time, no one can compete with the XRP ledger's technical spec or the performance of the consensus algorithm. This performance is set to improve with future updates. Now, I will state this. I mean, I'll give BSV its flowers, but one of the main things is they don't have the partnerships, of course, the central banks and so on. But will they? and that was another deep dive I was going to do a little bit later because it's been on my list to do for a while because they actually had a piece, I think it's on CoinGeek, where it mentions like kind of like a pitch, if you will, to the BIS, which is it sounds crazy in itself because some people are like, if Bitcoin's freedom, they will never pitch it to that. Yeah, reference the article. It's not me stating it. You see it literally from there, and that's a different story for another day. Yes, I understand that their scalability is, nothing compares to it, but it is profound to see this. So, what else do we have? Well, look at this for a second. As I jump into the next part, it brings us over here, and it basically is this. It is the breakdown of Interledger in a nutshell. It's 30 seconds, but man, listen to this. Here we go.
Packetizing and transporting data across a network of computers, the Interledger protocol found a way to standardize, packetize, and transport money across different places where you store money. We call these ledgers, but if you think about ledgers, they used to be literally a book of accounts that stored value and recorded your transactions. Your bank had a ledger, your shopkeeper had a ledger. Everywhere where you had credit, we stored money, there was a ledger associated with it. And when those moved to the digital world with developers, you know how developers are, I'm one of them.
Shout out to Mr. Mann. He also, referenced it. Interledger, Ripple's protocol, backbone of the FedNow payment system, enabling seamless cross-border transactions. All right. We're going to wrap it up with this. This is such a whopper, in my opinion. Because in the breakdown, you're going to see why ISO 222 is so important. You're also going to see the key benefits and, more importantly, the new data. So is IOTA part of that mix? Of course. Absolutely is. And it's crushing it. So I'm going to go ahead and play this, and this will be the final one. And then we will tie this in and recognize some of the price action that's happened with these coins and tokens. Smash a like if you haven't done so already. Really appreciate you guys. Here we go.
ISO 20022 and instant payments are accelerating payments modernization and serving as a catalyst for growth and innovation.
Banks are in the process of up-tiering their payments ecosystems to meet the ISO 20022 industry mandate, and also beginning to consider how they can leverage the additional ISO 20022 data to drive new value-added services for their customers and additional revenue opportunities.
Yeah, to explore this in more detail, we are joined right now by Courtney Trimble, Global Head of Payments at KPMG. Courtney, welcome.
Thank you.
Curious, what is the current state of play when we are talking about ISO 20022 and we're taking a look at the global landscape?
So, first of all, ISO 20022 is a watershed moment in the payments industry, a global mandate across all financial institutions globally. So some jurisdictions have gone live, such as the UK and EU. Some still to go live, such as the US, which goes live next March 2025. And then the SWIFT coexistence period completes in November 2025. So we have been very, very busy with helping institutions globally meet the global ISO 20022 mandate. So we started this journey about 5 years ago with the large transaction banks that have multiple jurisdictions in play and are still helping a lot of the smaller regional banks as well. So the focus has squarely been on the mandate and hitting that. The next focus is really, how do you benefit from this? How do you benefit from the incremental data? So that will be a next step and something that we're starting to look at as well.
Broadly speaking, why is this ISO so important to the industry, would you say?
It's first of all, everyone is speaking now with ISO 20022 a global language. Right now you have proprietary formats in each country. ISO is a common global business language. So we'll all be speaking the same language. That helps with cross-border payments, that helps with interoperability. Previously, different jurisdictions have different payment messaging systems, and this is really causing low SDP, and challenges from that perspective as well. So this will be certainly will help that cross-border interoperability, and then also the incremental data as well. Incremental data, 30 to 40% additional contextual data moving with the payment. So very, very important in terms of what do you do with that as a next step.
I mean, when there's seamless communication, when there's that interoperability effect, that's incredible. But of course, it comes with the challenges and the obstacles. What are those that banks have to overcome right now?
The challenges right now and what we've been working on for the past 5 years is this change impacts the entire payments ecosystem.
Yeah.
Everything from the payments processing layer to your upstream and downstream interfacing systems to your integration layers. It's really that payments message moves throughout the payments ecosystem. So it's really getting a handle on that, looking at what are the impacts across the entire payments ecosystem, and then, how big is the breadbox, if you will, in terms of what I need to worry about, and then the enablement, which we're heavily working on now.
You touched on the impacts. What is the knock-on effect then of ISO 20022 influencing sort of the broader payments modernization, shall we say?
It's having a huge impact on payments modernization. The two things that are really driving payments modernization and the impacts on that are, first of all, the move to instant payments, the move to a 24/7, 365 high availability environment, and second, the move to ISO 20022. And the reason why payments modernization is so impacted, it's because that move to 24/7, 365 high availability and the incremental data, the new messaging type for ISO, legacy platforms just can't accommodate it.
Yeah.
So payments platforms, we recently did a study, 79% with Fortune 500 executives, CEOs, and the findings came that 79% of all banks will be modernizing multiple payment types over the next several years. And specifically with respect to ISO 20022 and high-value payments, 63% of banks are currently modernizing or will be modernizing their high-value wires platform. So certainly this is serving as the catalyst for change in payments modernization.
I mean, there's no doubt it unlocks a lot of opportunities. So if we take a look at what ISO 20022 really provides, what are the key benefits in your view?
Well, first of all, it's you're talking about a new XML modern language. So that opens up new innovation opportunities, new revenue streams. You're talking about everyone operating and talking the same language. So that cross-border interoperability and the facilitation of cross-border payments is key. And then obviously the incremental data. You're talking about 30 to 40% additional data. What are you going to do with that data? How are you going to monetize it? You have incremental structured data from a address standpoint, remittance information, beneficiary information, just lots of new data to take, marry up with other external payment types or information sources, and how do you look at this on an industry by industry basis to really be able to monetize that?
Let's talk about this new data. What are you seeing in terms of the benefits of the incremental payments data that ISO 20022 provides?
Yeah, it's really those benefits, right? So looking at it on a industry by industry basis, I think one thing about ISO 20022, now we have access to a lot of new data. How do you take that data? How do you marry it up with external data sources? How do you look at it from an industry by industry basis to say, okay, across a specific industry's value chain, what is the impact to the benefits of a specific industry and how we can leverage that data? So many benefits to reap from the data.
There's no doubt the benefits are there, but when everybody is talking the common language, what do banks need to do to differentiate themselves, and go the extra mile with ISO?
I think, and this goes back to some of the upfront work and the ISO 20022 strategy and enablement that we're doing. There are different ways to look at this. You can look at this squarely as a compliance exercise, or you can look at this as a strategic business opportunity, right? It's such an overarching change. So really looking at that as a new strategic transformation effort is what banks need to do, right? Looking at it, we back to the survey of Fortune 500 CEOs. In this survey, we found that 76% of CEOs for banks that we interviewed or we got survey results back from, look at ISO 20022 not as a compliance exercise, but a strategic business opportunity.
Yeah.
So that differentiation is going to be making the strategic infrastructure decisions to be able to take advantage of that data, right, and unlock the potential of ISO 20022, and then harnessing that data, and then not looking at it as peanut butter, but really looking at it on an industry by industry basis to say, how am I going to leverage this to create new revenue streams for the bank and new value-added opportunities for my corporate clients.
It takes a lot of time, energy, and a lot of expertise, of which you've provided for us here. Courtney, thank you so much for your time and helping us really dissect all of the opportunities. That's Courtney Trimble, Global Head of Payments at KPMG. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Again, that mandate from My Number Card. That's just a taste of things to come. Of course, that's for Jasmine, but we're talking about ISO 222. Right, exactly. So, I mean, we're still in retail, everybody. IOTA, 152% up. Hedera, 137% up. I mean, you get the gist. XRP, you know, obviously major things went up as high as 290 with a pullback. Algorand was crushing it. Obviously, Quant, things like Stellar, you name it. But the key thing is utility. Even Flare did, you know, pretty decent, you know, not super, super awesome, but not too shabby. So the thing I want to jump into is this. Is it literally that simple? Well, for me, it's yes. The answer is yes. It has to be yes. Because every action has a reaction, but again, it's understanding liquidity pools. Say what you want. You know, if a coin or token, its underlying tech is tied to something that would activate it through a mandate, well, that has to be worth a heck of a lot of money in the future. And we're just having like little tastes of it. Yes, Jasmine obviously is doing his thing, but that My Number Card mandate, is that a great example of what a mandate can do for your particular token or coin? I think the answer is yes. And so that's where it's at for me. I really appreciate you guys listening to this. Let me know what you think in regards to it all. Do you think it's just a giant coincidence? I don't think it is. You know, say what you want. I mean, November 2025. I know everybody's excited right now, and rightfully so. Maybe you don't want to talk about a year from now, but I think that has to be the giant enchilada of them all.
If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. It's just a few taps. You can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.